Thank you. So welcome everybody. Today I'm going to talk about the British spider collections that we have at the Natural History Museum London. So a quick brief sort of background to the museum. We are the largest natural history museum in the United Kingdom, and our initial collection was based on a large bequest by Sir Hans Sloane in the 1700s. Our current building, which many of you will know, was opened in 1881. In terms of our arachnid collection, we have the biggest collection of arachnids in the United Kingdom. That covers both exotic and British species. We also, to our knowledge, have the largest collection of name-bearing type specimens of arachnids of any United Kingdom museum. So our collection of arachnids broadly consists of specimens preserved in IDA, alcohol. That comprises the bulk of the collection of spiders. Slide preserved specimens, we have a few slide preserved spiders, but the vast majority of it is mites, acari. We also have some dried specimens. These tend not to be British species though. These tend to be things that were used in old displays, so large ferrophosid spiders, large scorpions, amphiplagids and apilionids. All of our alcohol specimens are housed in the Darwin Centre, DC2, where we have a custom-built storeroom with cabinets which are kept at a very specific temperature. In addition to our morphological collection, we are now establishing with the Molecular Collections Facility DNA samples for the Darwin Tree of Life project, which I'll get onto in a little while. Broadly, we have international scope. We have particular strength in African, Asian and South American species due to lots of former British territories and lots of expeditions that were mounted in that area. But we do also have a strong British reference collection, and we also have a reasonably good historical collection of British spiders. As part of our collections development, we've acquired many personal collections of British spiders. One of the historical ones, which I'll get onto in a second, is the Arthur Randall Jackson collection and the Doug Clark collection. In more recent times, we have had Helen Reed's collection, Rowley Snazzle, Tony Russell Smith, Paul Selden and Doug Marriott. So on the left there, you can see examples just of some of the cabinets. So the reference collection has over 90% coverage, and it is primarily comprised of the A.R. Jackson collection and then some later material which was donated predominantly by Helen Reed. So a little bit of background on Jackson. He was born in 1877 and lived to 1944. He was a general practitioner like many arachnologists of his day, and later like Mike Roberts. He was in touch with all of the other specialists of the time, Peter Merritt, Frank Millidge, Lockett. Indeed, Lockett and Millidge learned directly from Jackson. Unfortunately, later in his life, he had a few things that prevented his research on British spiders. First of all, his busy job as a GP was giving him very little free time. Then, very sadly, his wife became severely disabled, and he had to care for her as a full-time carer. So in the end, he never did publish any really large taxonomic books as was originally proposed. He was going to write the book on British spider taxonomy. Unfortunately, because of what happened, that didn't occur. His collection is in London. I know there's also some specimens in Manchester. So we have around 700 jars, although probably a little bit more now in the reference collection. And of that, metadata has been taken from 2,872 specimens on the most recent count. And this is being captured by Bill Parker, our membership officer, who is one of the volunteers at the Natural History Museum, London. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the notable collectors that have built significant parts of both the reference collection and the British collection more broadly. So in the top left corner, that's Doug Marriott next to my boss, Jan. Doug very recently donated his entire British spider collection to the museum. I've just finished recurating the first 100 tubes. It is a really beautifully housed collection, and it's all very meticulously documented. So no doubt that's going to be of significant use to future researchers. So many of you will know Doug. He contributed a lot of records to the spider recording scheme, and this is a great example of us receiving collections other than the core reference collection, but which still are sort of reference collections in their own right. There's a really good coverage of species in Doug's collections. Then to the right, that's Doug Clark. Doug Clark was one of the former curators of arachnids. He contributed significantly to the Flatford Mill Spider Group and the British Spider Study Group, which were the predecessors of the BAS. Doug had a particular interest in exotic spiders. He was responsible for recurating our type material of ferrophosids and other exotic spiders, but he also assembled a reasonably good collection of British spiders and also spiders from overseas British territories. Doug's collection is currently being recurated, and I know we have some particularly good material from the southeast of England. Onto the middle row on the left there is Tony Russell-Smith. No doubt many of you, if you've recorded spiders in Kent, will know Tony. Very nice guy, always happy to help people out. In addition to his British spider work, he's also a renowned authority on African spiders, particularly lycosids and salticids. To the right is Professor Paul Selden. He's an honorary research fellow at the NHM, and we were very lucky to get his collection of spiders. He's also a world authority on fossil arachnids. On the bottom row, on the left, is Rowley Snazzle. Again, many of you will know Rowley. He is a renowned taxonomist. He discovered a lot of species that were new to Britain, and he's also contributed to African spiders. And then on the bottom right, last but not least, Dr. Helen Reid. She donated her spider collection to the NHM, and it comprised the more modern component of our reference collection. So we were very grateful to all of these individuals for their work. So in terms of the most recent work that the museum is doing, I'd like to talk about the Darwin Tree of Life project, which is an initiative participated in by the NHM and by a variety of other organisations, which is aiming to sequence all of the eukaryotes in the United Kingdom. So spiders are a key target, and we have many species and families that still need to be represented. Now that includes very speciose families like Linophiidae, where we need some of the more rare species, same also for some of the more uncommon Phoridiids, but then there are also families where there may only be one species or a couple of genera in the UK, but due to their rarity or other reasons, we haven't yet had them to sequence. So in terms of the Darwin Tree of Life project, there's two ways which we can receive material. First of all, we have expeditions where NHM staff will go to nature reserves, and there will be various specialists for each group, and we will all target our specialist groups to try and find material. The other way is that we are very keen to work with external collaborators. So anyone that is very regularly recording spiders and has access to collecting in many areas. If you have material that we don't yet have for the sequencing, we would be very interested indeed to hear from you. Involving citizen scientists is a really important part of this project, recognising that people from all backgrounds can make contributions to science. I'd like to briefly touch on the Mike Roberts collection. So Jam recently published in the Festschrift a very excellent paper. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but because it specifically relates to many of the drawings that Mike made for his book on British spiders, I'd like to just briefly mention this. We have his drawings. Many of these drawings also have personal annotations. They might have annotations where he says that he's subsequently done a new illustration because he didn't think that the original one was good enough. There was also notes on his thoughts on the taxonomic placements of certain species. And the art collection is housed in the Special Collections division of our library and archives. If you're interested to know more about that or to perform archival research, then there are details in Jan's paper on how to access that. So that's the current, but I'd like to also briefly touch on the future. The arachnid collections will be moving in 2025 to the Thames Valley Science Park in Reading. In addition to us, there are also another 26.5 million specimens from other areas of the Department of Life Sciences, which are going to be moved to the Science Park. So whilst we make those preparations over the next few years, there will be a period of time when the collections are being transitioned to the Thames Valley Science Park, where we won't be in a position to do loans or host visits. But the Thames Valley Science Park facility should be open in terms of our collections in 2026. It's a digitisation centre and a collections access centre, which we hope will further address the biodiversity crisis and to increase access for scholars. So I'd like to make some acknowledgements here at the end. Jan, for her support of my work. I've known Jan for nearly 10 years now. She supported me in my initial role as a volunteer at the museum, and it's thanks to Jan that I've then received my 2 full-time posts. I'd like to thank Doug Marriott for recently donating his collection. Jan went to go and visit him and collect his collection. He's now in a care home, but he's in good spirits, I'm told, and he was still interested to hear about the affairs of the Society and spiders more broadly. I'd like to thank Paul, Rowley, Helen and Tony, who provided their photos at various points over the last year for different projects, and for donating their spider collections to us as well, because they're important not just for our British collections, but for our exotic collections. And with that, I will end. Thank you very much.